the boar who understood life and death. In the depths of the forest, where the trees rose majestically, and the ground was covered with a carpet of crisp leaves, lived Alvar, a wild boar whose mind was plunged into constant confusion and fear. Despite the abundance of nature that surrounded him, his heart was plagued with existential questions that tormented him day and night. Alvar was a curious wild boar by nature, always looking for answers to the mysteries of life. However, the more he learned, the more questions arose in his mind. How could he avoid the suffering and fear of death that seemed to lurk in every corner? How to find true happiness, knowing that everything he loved would eventually fade away? What was the true meaning of life if in the end, everything ended in nothing? These questions chased him ceaselessly, clouding his mind and oppressing his heart. He watched his wild boar companions live carefree, enjoying the simple pleasures of life in the forest, but he could not help but feel alienated from all that. His mind was constantly trapped in a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts and emotions. One day, as he wandered through the forest in search of answers, Alvar came across an imposing old oak. Its cracked bark and its imposing presence seemed to contain the secrets of the universe. Alvar sat in the shade of this ancestral tree and let his tears flow freely. Why am I so tormented? Am I destined to live a life of confusion and fear? Alvar lamented aloud. Suddenly, a soft crunch overtook him. He looked up and met an old wild boar, whose grayish fur and wise eyes denoted a wisdom acquired through countless winters. This old wild boar was known in the herd for his deep understanding of the mysteries of life and death. I heard your anguish, young Alvar, said the old wild boar with a soft but firm voice. Your questions are the same that have tormented living beings since the beginning of time. But do not fear, for there are answers if you are willing to listen with an open heart. Alvar was left speechless, unable to believe his luck. He had been looking for answers for so long, and now a wise man had appeared before him, offering the promise to alleviate his confusion. Please, honorable old man, share your wisdom with me, Alvar begged, his voice full of hope and despair at the same time. The old wild boar sat down slowly and told Alvar to follow him. Together, they went deep into the forest where the old man had his burrow, a sacred place where he had meditated and sought enlightenment for decades. As they walked, Alvar shared all his fears and questions with the old wild boar. He told him about his fear of death, his struggle to find lasting happiness, and his tireless search for a purpose in life. The old man listened attentively without judging, allowing Alvar to empty his heart. Finally, they reached the burrow, a quiet and serene space where an aura of peace reigned. The old wild boar invited Alvar to sit in front of him and began to share the ancient teachings that had guided his own life. The old wild boar took a deep breath of fresh forest air and looked at Alvar with compassionate eyes. He knew that the young man was struggling with the same questions that had tormented countless beings over the centuries, and he was determined to guide him towards understanding and inner peace. Listen carefully, young Alvar, began the wise old man with a deep and serene voice. The teachings that I am about to share with you are ancient, but as relevant today as they were at the dawn of time. They are the fundamental principles of Buddhism, a philosophy of life that has enlightened countless seekers of truth. Alvar leaned forward, his heart beating in anticipation. Finally, after so long looking for answers, he would have them at his fingertips. In the heart of the Buddhist teachings is the understanding that suffering is an inevitable reality of existence. The old wild boar continued. We all face aging, disease, separation, and loss, either before or after. The reason for this is that life is uncertainty. Everything in this world is only temporary. Alvar felt slowly, feeling the resonance of these words in the depths of his being. Was not his fear of death and his search for lasting happiness a reflection of this fundamental reality? But change is certainty, the old man continued. That is impermanence. Our life is pressured by internal and external factors that lead to constant changes. Everything, ultimately, is in decomposition and disintegration, that is, suffering. There is no I that is independent or permanent. Suddenly, a wave of understanding invaded Alvar. Suddenly, everything made sense. His struggle to find a lasting purpose and eternal happiness was a battle lost from the beginning, because everything in this world was destined to change and disappear. We can only delay or escape suffering for a while, but the same is inevitable, the old wild boar continued. What we can do is alleviate suffering and reduce its effects when it occurs. However, it is possible that these conditions of suffering can only affect us physically, but not necessarily affect our mental conditions. Alvar frowned, trying to unravel the meaning of these deep words. How could one be free from suffering when it seemed so omnipresent? The old man, perceiving the confusion of Alvar, smiled softly. Buddhism believes that every human being can cultivate his mind to be free from suffering. Despite the fact that we all face aging, illness, and death, the mind does not have to suffer the pain of them. If we only accept reality without rejection and without resistance, acceptance is the most important factor so that we can be free from suffering. A ray of hope shone in Alvar's eyes. Could it be possible to find inner peace simply by accepting the harsh realities of life? Instead of being affected by physical suffering, we can use it for our own benefit. Open your eyes to the fact that nothing is certain, the old boar explained. Wisdom is also the key to success, to enlighten our minds and to be free from suffering. There have been numerous monks and lay people who received enlightenment while they were facing suffering due to illness and death. In other words, illness and death can develop our wisdom to realize the ultimate truth and achieve enlightenment. Alvar was breathless before the depth of these teachings. Could he also find enlightenment through suffering instead of fearing it? The old man continued, his voice full of compassion. Preparation for death is a need of all human beings, because we will all face it, no matter how we are or who we are. We must prepare for death by exercising the contemplation of death. This means that we must constantly remember that we are going to die sooner or later. We do not know when, where, or how. A chill ran through Alvar's spine before the mention of death, but instead of feeling fear, he felt strangely curious. Then we ask ourselves, if we were to die soon, are we prepared for that? The old boar continued. Have we done a good deed for our loved ones and for others? Is it enough? Are we responsible enough for everything we have? Are we ready to leave everything behind? Alvar reflected on these questions, feeling ashamed for having lived a life centered on himself, consumed by his own fears and anxieties. If the answer is, I'm not ready yet, the old man said firmly. We must do good deeds from now on and try to complete the tasks and responsibilities. Finally, we have to learn to let things go. Doing good deeds means that we have nothing to regret. Then letting things flow will allow us to face death and be prepared for it now and in the future. The words of the old boar resonated deeply inside Alvar. Suddenly, everything seemed so clear. The key was not to fear death, but to live it fully, do good, and be ready to let everything go when the time came. With tears of gratitude in his eyes, Alvar humbly bowed to the wise old man. Thank you, honorable master. Your teachings have enlightened my mind and my heart. Now I understand that life is not about seeking eternal happiness or avoiding suffering, but about accepting impermanence and living with purpose and compassion. The old boar smiled warmly. You have understood well, young Alvar. Now the path opens before you. Remember these teachings and allow them to guide you towards a full life without regrets. And when the time comes to leave, Do it with grace and acceptance." With these final words, the old man slowly got up and withdrew to the depths of his burrow, leaving Alvar immersed in a deep meditation about the truths he had just learned. The words of the old boar resonated in Alvar's mind like an endless echo. Sitting in the serene burrow, surrounded by the aroma of wet and mossy soil, he immersed himself in a deep meditation. It was as if a thick fog had dissipated from his mind, revealing a clarity that he had never experienced before. As his breathing became more composed, the thoughts and worries that used to torment him gradually faded away. Instead, a feeling of calm and acceptance began to flood his being. For the first time in a long time, Alvar felt truly present in the moment, free from the weight of the past and the anxieties about the future. Around him, the sounds of the forest claimed a new life. The whisper of the leaves in the wind, the trill of the birds, the rustle of the branches under the footsteps of invisible creatures. Everything seemed to be in perfect harmony, moving at the constant rhythm of change and impermanence. Alvar understood then that his obsessive search for answers and his fear of death were nothing more than illusions created by his own mind. Life itself was a fluid dance, a constant birth and death, without beginning or end. Clinging to it would only bring suffering, but accepting it with grace and wisdom was the path to liberation. As this revelation settled in his being, Alvar felt a deep sense of relief. He no longer had to fight against the current of existence. Instead, he could flow with it, open and receptive to every precious moment. With this new perspective, Alvar began to reflect on his life and the tasks ahead of him. He remembered the words of the old man about the importance of living with purpose and compassion, sowing good deeds and cultivating significant relationships. A series of images, his herd, which he had neglected in his ceaseless search for answers. The corners of the forest that needed protection and care. The youngest wild boars that could benefit from his newly discovered guide and wisdom. A burning determination lit up inside Alvar. He had nothing to fear, neither life nor death. Instead, he would embrace every moment as an opportunity to grow, learn, and serve others. He would do everything within his reach to live a full and regretless life, so that when the time came to leave, he could do it with grace and acceptance. With this purpose in mind, Alvar emerged from his meditation, feeling reborn. His eyes shone with a new spark of life, and his heart was full of gratitude for the teachings of the old wild boar that had guided him to this understanding. From that day on, Alvar dedicated himself to putting into practice what he had learned. He spent long hours in meditation, cultivating his mind and strengthening his ability to accept the impermanence of all things. But he also immersed himself fully in the life of his herd, being a pillar of strength and wisdom for his companions. He made efforts to preserve and protect the delicate balance of the forest, teaching the youngest to value and respect nature. In addition, he became a mentor for those who, like him, sought answers to the great questions of life and death. With each compassionate action and each imparted lesson, Alvar felt that his heart was filled with a deep peace. He had found the true meaning of life, not in the search for eternal happiness or in the evasion of suffering, but in the full acceptance of impermanence and in the dedication to a meaningful and unrepentant existence. Time passed in a serene way in the forest. The seasons changed one after another, and Alvar immersed himself completely in his new perspective of life. Every day was a celebration of existence, an opportunity to practice the teachings of the old boar and live with purpose and compassion. In the mornings, he found Alvar meditating on the edge of a crystal stream, allowing the soft murmur of the water to calm his mind and connect him with the nature that surrounded him. It was in those moments of stillness when he felt closer to the fundamental truth of impermanence, and his heart was filled with a deep acceptance. After meditation, Alvar dedicated himself to helping his herd in any task that was necessary. Whether it was collecting food, repairing damaged burrows, or simply offering a comforting shoulder, his presence had become a beacon of wisdom and compassion for all those who surrounded him. The youngest wild boars in particular felt attracted by the serenity and grace with which Alvar faced life. They often gathered around him, eager to hear his stories and learn from his experiences. Alvar taught them the importance of living in harmony with nature, respecting all living beings and cultivating a calm and compassionate mind. But his influence was not limited to his own herd. Alvar had become a guardian of the forest, dedicating countless hours to preserving and protecting the delicate balance of this ecosystem. He led efforts to plant new trees, clean the burrows, and prevent stealthy hunting, inspiring other animals to join his cause. On one occasion, while supervising the construction of a new shelter for the young of his herd, Alvar met an old friend, a wise deer who had witnessed his transformation. "Alvar, my friend," said the deer with a warm smile, "it is a pleasure to see you so full of life and purpose. Your actions have brought so much beauty and harmony to this forest." Alvar smiled at the compliment, but his eyes shone with gratitude. "Thank you, dear friend. I owe everything to the teachings of the old boar. He showed me the way to acceptance and inner peace." The deer felt with wisdom. "Yes, that old man is truly a treasure for all of us, but you are the one who has taken those teachings and has turned them into a way of life. Your dedication is an inspiring example for everyone around you." Alvar reflected on these words as he continued with his work. It was true that he had found a new perspective of life, one that filled him with a deep sense of purpose and fulfillment. Every day was an opportunity to show his gratitude for the teachings he had received, sowing the seeds of compassion and harmony wherever he went. As the sun set, Alvar often went to a quiet clearing in the forest, where he could contemplate the spectacle of colors painted by the sky. It was at those moments when he felt more connected with the constant flow of life, the ephemeral beauty that arose and disappeared in a blink of an eye. But instead of filling him with sadness or fear, this understanding of impermanence filled him with a deep appreciation for every precious moment. Every breath, every beat of his heart was a gift that had to be treasured and lived to the fullest. As the stars began to twinkle in the firmament, Alvar immersed himself in a final meditation, thanking for all the blessings that life had granted him. He thanked the old boar for his transformative teachings, his herd for their love and support, and the forest itself for being a place of healing and growth. With each passing day, Alvar felt more at peace with himself and with the world around him. He had found the true meaning of life, not in the search for eternal happiness or in the evasion of suffering, but in the full acceptance of impermanence and in the dedication to a meaningful and compassionate existence.